every Maya city, be it Tikal, be it Chichen Itza, it doesn't matter. They show the descending gods. All these Maya cities are dedicated to the gods, and the gods were the teacher from heaven. They worshipped them, and they always waited for the return of the gods, because the gods promised, we will return one day. Tikal is in today's Guatemala. Guatemala has, of course, a museum like every capital, and in the Museum of Guatemala, you find different gods, heads of the gods, with helmets on, sometimes with the apparatuses on their noses, because they had an artificial breathing, etc. I know the old mythologies, and many of the mythologies speak about the gods who descended, and they did not breed like humans. For example, Abraham, in the Abraham apocryphic, he makes a contact with two extraterrestrials, and he say, they did not breed like humans. Now in Tikal, we find some of these heads. Not only in Tikal, also in Chichen Itza, and they had some artificial breathing apparatuses before their nose. I think they must have used some kind of filter against our bacteria and virus on our planet. Palenque is the one sensation among the Maya. And I would say Palenque is the one sensation concerning the whole idea of extraterrestrials. In 1949, the Mexican archaeologist Professor Rutz discovered on the Temple of Inscription, but the Temple of Inscription is in reality a pyramid. He discovered a groove up on the top, and then they found a shaft. Inside the shaft, a staircase going down. It went down under the pyramid. But the staircase in that time, in 1949, was full with stone. So it took 3 years to dig out all these stones. In 1952, Professor Dr. Rutz, with his students in archaeology, they stand before a big door in the shape of a triangle. They never found a door in the shape of a triangle. The door was broken up, and Professor Rutz, with his candles in his light, looked into a room, and the first words he said, "I don't believe my eyes. I see in a sort of chapel, and from the ceiling down are hanging things like candles." In reality, it were not candles, it was stalactites and stalagmites. So the room is 7 meters long, and on the bottom there was a big plate with 3.80 meter long, 2.20 meter large. Of course, we live in a reasonable society, and our science always looks for the next reasonable answer before they go into speculation, which is normal, which makes sense. Around this stone plate, there was an inscription, and only a few words they could decipher. For example, the word Pakal. And they knew Pakal was the second last ruler of the city of Palenque. So they said, this man sitting in this frame inside, he represents Pakal. And they said, he's not sitting in a frame. The frame in reality shows the open mouth of a mythological monster. So what I look as frame, it's just the teeth of the mythological monster. And he's falling into the mouth of this mythological monster. But out of his chest, you see the living tree or the tree of life, etc. And what I explained as something like a linking flame coming out at the end, archaeology said, no, these are just the stylized hairs of the beard of the weather god. So this was an archaeological suggestion when they found this tombstone of Palenque in 1952. In the meantime, from 1952 until today, I have read in the scientific literature 14 different explanations what this should mean. It is always Pakal, that's for sure. Pakal, the second last ruler. And now, just a few years ago, the two leading epigraphers are the people, the professors, who are able to read the Maya language. Professor Dr. John Stewart and Stewart, because it's the father and the son, Stewart and Stewart. And they know everything now in Maya graphics, in Maya writing. And they say, yes, it is Pakal. But Pakal is not falling into the open mouth of a mythological monster. It has nothing to do with cross of life or tree of life. Every little thing which is chiseled in the stone has to do with the universe. Pakal is in fact leaving the earth, flying out to the universe. So the tombstone of Palenque is still there in the original pyramid because it's too big, they cannot put it out. Normally, pyramids were not tombs, but the so-called Temple of Inscription in Palenque, which is a pyramid, was in fact a tomb. Under this tombstone, there was a grave, and they found a skeleton and a mask. It's probably Pakal, the second last ruler of Palenque. But what we do not understand, the normal Maya, their size was about 1.50 meters to 1.60 meters. And that skeleton in there of Pakal is 1.81 meters. He's too big for a Maya. You know, 1.81 meters is not Maya-like. And also his nose is not human because the bone of his nose starts already on his front, up there. So we say it's Pakal, but nobody is sure if it's Pakal. Now concerning the stalactites and stalagmites, you know, soon as a pyramid is somehow broken and the rain goes into the pyramid, some stalactites and stalagmites start to form. But this takes an eternity. They found 7-meter-long stalactites and stalagmites in this room, which is situated under the pyramid. Don't forget this. Because of the stalactites, you could measure or calculate how old is this room. It does not fit to the Maya. The Maya is a relatively young society, and Palenque is more or less about 800 AD, so after Christ. It's not very old. Others say even younger. They say 1400 after Christ. But it does not fit together with the stalactites and stalagmites. First, we had this tomb in the down in the earth. This tomb was covered by this large tombstone with the chiseling of Pakal. And later, only on, they started to construct the pyramid over the tomb. The tomb is much older than the pyramid itself. I believe that first there was a tomb down with the holy figure, one of the gods, or a mixture of the gods, or an imitation of the gods. And they chiseled this into this gigantic tombstone. And this was there, a holy place for the Maya or the people who lived before the Maya for thousands of years. And only later, because it was a holy place, now they started to construct a pyramid, the so-called Temple of Inscription, over the old tomb. So in my suggestion, the tomb is probably 5,000 years old because of the stalactites and stalagmites. And the temple itself, the Temple of Inscription, is young, let's say maybe 1,500 years old. We all are descendants of the gods. We have writings which say that Noah, our progenitor father, which survived the flood, was the product of an artificial mutation. Now we all are offsprings of Noah. So we all have extraterrestrial genes in us. The Mayas knew that the gods, when they descended, the Mayas knew that the gods were the teachers because they learned their astronomy, and they had a fantastic astronomy. The Maya knew, for example, the astronomy, the surrounding of Venus around the sun, so precise that in 6,000 years, there is only a difference of about 1 hour. So the teachers from heaven were the extraterrestrials. They knew this. Now, every Maya city was constructed for the gods. And in every Maya city, it doesn't matter where you are, you see these heads, these helmets. You see these beings. Sometimes they have boxes on their chest. They use their 10 fingers to manipulate some controls, some nuts on the boxes. So it's imitating technology. Maya land is full with these things. The question is clear. The gods were extraterrestrials.